We're starting today's conversation in a very specific place and time. Let's go to Paris, May 22nd, 1907.
Okay.
We're inside the Hotel Drouot. This is the big auction house, where great estates and fortunes get liquidated. The room smells of old paper, beeswax, and there's a catalog being passed around.
And that catalog is really the key to this whole story. It's titled Objects of Art and Furnishing, belonging to M. Lesrel, painter.
Right, and usually when an artist sells off their collection like this, it means something's gone wrong.
Exactly. Bankruptcy, a scandal, maybe he's passed away.
But M. Lesrel Adolphe Alexandre Lesrel is 68, he's rich, he's famous, he's at the absolute peak of his game.
And he is selling everything. I mean, looking at this inventory, this isn't a spring cleaning.
Not at all. He's liquidating his entire world.
It feels less like an artist's sale and more like, I don't know, the ransacking of a 17th century palace.
It really does. I'm looking at the list of ceramics here. We're not talking about dinner plates.
Yeah.
It says hollow plates featuring a sun mask, ancient Rouen faience.
Which is that super high-end tin-glazed pottery. Very fancy.
And Hispano-Moresque dishes with these, metallic reflections.
And that's just the tableware. The armory section is, well, it's a literal armory. You've got rapiers. You have these things called Maximilian pauldrons.
So that's the shoulder armor.
Heavy shoulder armor, yeah, from the 1500s. And then there are the wheel-lock muskets.
That term wheel lock, that's important for Lesrel, isn't it? It was kind of the high-tech firearm of its day.
It was. It replaced the old matchlock system. It used a spinning wheel to create sparks. Super complex, super expensive, and a huge status symbol.
Which is the point. He wasn't just collecting things. The catalog just says the sale is cause de départ, due to departure.
But departure to where? And why sell the very things that made you famous?
Because these weren't just objects he liked to have around.
No. They were his tools, his props. Lesrel was known for painting these incredibly realistic scenes from the era of Louis XIII. When you look at his paintings, you're not seeing imagined objects. You're seeing these specific objects.
So he didn't just paint the 17th century.
He owned it. He built it in his studio. And then, in May 1907, he decided to sell the time machine.
Okay, so to understand why he tore it all down, we have to go back and figure out how he built it in the first place. And he didn't start in Paris.
No, far from it. He was born in 1839 in a little town called Jeunesse on the coast of Normandy. And the geography there is, it's everything.
What do you mean?
If you stand on the shore in Jeunesse, you are staring right at Mont Saint-Michel.
The Abbey in the sea.
Right. This huge, Gothic, mysterious fortress monastery rising out of the tides. It's only accessible at low tide. Poets like Yeats were obsessed with it. Imagine being a kid in the 1840s, and that's your view every single day.
It would definitely give you a taste for history, for romance and grandeur.
Exactly. It kind of sets you on a path of looking backwards.
But there's another detail about his childhood that I found interesting. His father is listed as a laborer. Now, that sounds like a manual laborer, but that's not quite right, is it?
Not at all. It's a huge mistranslation of the social context. In the 19th century countryside, a laborer was an affluent farmer, a landowner. He owned the land and the equipment.
So Lesrel came from money.
He had a safety net, which is so important because in 1861, at 22, he moves to Paris. He's not going there to be a starving artist in some garret. He's going to the best art school, the École des Beaux-Arts.
And he gets in with the right people.
He gets into the workshop of Jean-Léon Gérôme, a giant of the era. The records actually show Lesrel as student number 22 in his registry.
Gérôme, he's always painted as the bad guy in the story of Impressionism, the ultimate academic painter.
And that's fair. Academicism was the whole philosophy. It was about rigorous training, perfect technique, classical subjects, no messy brushstrokes, no blurry impressions of light.
You paint what's there, and you paint it perfectly.
Right. But here's the twist. Gérôme taught him how to paint, but his real artistic hero, the guy whose style he really adopted, was Jean-Louis Ernest Meissonier.
Okay, so what's the difference between them?
Meissonier basically invented what you could call documentary history painting. Before him, history paintings were these huge, dramatic, emotional scenes.
Like generals on horseback pointing swords.
Exactly. Meissonier zoomed all the way in. He was microscopic. He didn't care about the grand drama of a battle. He cared if the buckle on a soldier's boot was accurate for the year 1806.
So it's a shift from history as drama to history as fact.
Or at least history as an accumulation of accurate details.
Oh.
And Lesrel just soaked this up. He adopted that Meissonier style. The photographic precision, the tiny details, and a focus on genre scenes.
Which is just the art history term for scenes of everyday life, right?
Yep. So instead of painting the king signing a treaty, Lesrel would paint the king's guards waiting in the antechamber, maybe playing a game of cards.
And that becomes his whole thing. By the 1880s, he finds his niche. It's the reign of Louis XIII, the era of the Three Musketeers.
But he gives us a totally different version of the Musketeers, kind of the anti-Dumas Musketeers.
That's a great way to put it, because when I think Musketeers, I'm thinking sword fights, intrigue, jumping off balconies.
Lesrel's guys don't do any of that.
Yeah.
His subjects are these urbane, sophisticated gentlemen. They're not dueling in the street. They're sitting in a beautiful room, discussing a piece of art.
Or playing chess, or drinking wine. It's a very calm, very refined vision of the past.
There's a painting, the practice recital, that sold for over $85,000. It shows 7 musicians rehearsing. There are lute players, a cellist, and it's so quiet and composed.
And so detailed. The description mentions pale green tapestries, patterned carpets, satin tablecloths.
And this is where we have to go back to that auction catalog from 1907.
Ah, right. Because he didn't just imagine that stuff.
He couldn't have. He was painting his own furniture. That Maximilian pauldron from the auction list. It's sitting in the corner of a painting. Those Flemish tapestries. They're the literal backdrop for these scenes.
So he wasn't a history painter. He was a still life painter. But his still life was an entire historical era that he built in his house.
Yes. He was a documentary painter, but he was documenting a stage set he designed himself.
That's almost like a form of method acting for painting. You surround yourself with the physical reality so you can capture it perfectly.
He wanted what one critic called absolute solidity. At a time when the Impressionists were dissolving the world into light and blur, Lesrel was doubling down, making sure you could feel the weight of the velvet.
And who were the people in the velvet? Who were his models?
Well, often, it was his family. In 1872, he married Josephine Latongue, who had actually been one of his models.
And they had children.
2 daughters, Marthe and Jeanne. And they pop up in his work all the time. There's a famous painting called L'Alsace-Lorraine that features both of them. It adds this weirdly personal, domestic layer to his historical fantasies.
It's so interesting that he was doing this and becoming so successful at the exact moment modernism is exploding. You have Monet, Renoir, Degas. They're changing art forever.
And Lesrel is just completely ignoring them. And from our perspective, it's easy to write him off as old-fashioned.
But the market didn't see it that way.
The market loved him. While the critics were arguing about Impressionism, the people with money, especially the new money, were buying Lesrel.
This is the American connection, right? The Gilded Age.
Absolutely. The Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the railroad and steel barons, they were his biggest clients.
But why? Why does a guy who builds steel mills in Pittsburgh want a painting of a French musketeer playing a cello?
It's about buying legitimacy. Think about it. These guys were fantastically wealthy, but they were culturally insecure. They were new money.
Ah, I see.
By buying a Lesrel painting, which shows these refined, aristocratic, leisurely gentlemen, they were sort of buying a mirror of who they wanted to be. They were purchasing a lineage.
It's like lifestyle branding before that was even a term. It says, I'm not just a rich industrialist, I am a man of taste.
Precisely. And dealers like Arthur Tooth and Sons in London were basically a pipeline, just funneling Lesrel's work straight into American mansions.
And the prices show it. His big narrative paintings have sold for, what, up to $155,000?
At least. A piece like Les Mousquetaires du Roi, the King's Musketeers, it's pure theater. You've got a trumpeter, officers gambling, a suit of armor in the corner. It checks every single box for that Gilded Age buyer. It looks expensive, it feels historical, and it's safe.
So he masters the style, he builds the world in his studio, he conquers the market. Which brings us right back to 1907 and the Great Sale.
He sells it all, the muskets, the tapestries, the ceramic plates.
Cause de départ, due to departure. And he leaves Paris and goes back to Genève, the little town by the sea where it all started. He's 68 years old.
It's like he finished the project. He spent 40 years creating this perfect, sanitized, beautiful version of the 17th century. He captured it on canvas, he sold the canvases to the Americans, and then he was done.
He didn't need the props anymore.
He didn't need to live in his own museum. He went home.
Yeah.
And he didn't stop painting, which is really important. He just became a local artist.
He did a painting for the town hall, right? And a stained glass window for the church.
Yeah, he just reintegrated back into the community he came from.
And he lived for a long time after that. Until 1929. He was almost 90.
That date, 1929. That means he lived through the First World War.
I was just thinking that. What a brutal contrast.
Here's a man who spent his whole life painting these quiet, gentle, bloodless wars. Officers cleaning beautiful weapons that are never fired in anger. And then, in his old age, the world descends into the trenches. Mustard gas, machine guns.
The reality of modern mechanized warfare just completely erases that romantic, detailed vision of combat he and Meissonier had perfected.
And he's just there, in Jeunesse, painting stained glass. He survived the end of his own era in more ways than one.
It really changes how you see that auction in 1907. It's not just him retiring. He was liquidating a fantasy that was about to become totally impossible to believe in.
He got out at the perfect time. He sold the era while it was still a beautiful idea, right before the 20th century came along and smashed it to pieces.
There is something incredibly smart about that. We always think of artists as needing to suffer and go down with the ship. Lesrel just packed up and went home.
He understood the value of the past, but he also knew when it was time to step back into his own present.
So if you're ever in a museum and you see one of those paintings, a cavalier in a velvet coat playing a lute, look really closely at the lute.
Look at the carpet he's standing on. Look at the armor in the corner.
You might just be looking at a real object that was sold in a crowded room in Paris back in 1907 by a man who was ready to go home and watch the tide roll in.
The man who sold a time machine.
And that's our look into the world of Adolphe Alexandre Lesrel. We hope this gives you a new way to see those quiet, incredibly detailed paintings you might have walked past before. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss where we're headed next.
Always look at the details.
We'll catch you on the next one.